Greetings, my excellent friend.
Welcome to Most Excellent Adventure to
Heavy Metal
History.
All right, listeners, I am here with Larissa Stupar from Venom Prison. She is the lead vocalist of the band. Larissa, thank you for taking time to do this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So the thing I kind of like to start off with here to get rolling, where did it all start with you into getting into heavy metal? Like, what were the first bands you remember hearing? And maybe not even necessarily heavy metal, because I know you have like punk rock roots, and I'm a big proponent of punk and metal kind of being stepbrothers, so to speak. So what were some of the first bands and records that you remember hearing?
Some of the first ones, well, I have a big sister, and she always used to listen to Nirvana and The Prodigy. That was like back in the 90s. So that was like the first time I really encountered music that wasn't necessarily mainstream at the time. So from then on, I just continued to listen to like alternative music. And when I actually started to have an interest in music myself, it was bands like Slipknot, Linkin Park, Korn, Limp Bizkit that were jumping right into my face when I was like around 11, 12, 13. So that was the first time I've actively checked out bands that were heavy.
So you were there like right in the midst of the new metal explosion.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think
it was all over MTV, and I used to stay up really late at night to just being able to check out all these bands, because in Germany they were only running late at night on the weekends, so that's what I was doing on my weekends.
I think that's how it was here too. I think I was probably around the same age you were when those bands were coming up, and it was the same thing. It was always like Saturday nights at like 11 or 12 at night. That's when they would play like Headbangers Ball, and yeah, it was just all like new metal around that time. Because I think
yeah, definitely.
Those weren't like the first bands I heard necessarily, but they were the ones that kind of like opened the window for me too. But I was more into punk rock before that. And yeah, it's weird how our generation kind of, we started off with new metal, but like it seems like a lot of us definitely try to not admit that we liked it as much as we did when we were young.
That's true, but like we can't change the fact that was the music that was around at the time, can we? It's
No,
not
we
really
can't.
our fault.
I mean, I still stick to my guns this day that Slipknot's Iowa is probably one of the heaviest albums of its time, and that came out like 2000, 2001, I think.
Definitely.
Holy
And it's
shit.
aged really well. If you listen to it now, it's still heavy as fuck.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I don't know, new metal gets a bad rap because of how it turned out, you know, with bands like Limp Bizkit and stuff like that, but there's some gems in there if you really, really look into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that one.
So what do you think it was about the genre that kind of pulled you into it? Because I know, you know, it's not for everybody. It's a very niche kind of music style, and, you know, it takes a certain kind of person to want to explore the heavier side of things. So what do you think it was that just kind of pulled you into it?
I think I was just fascinated by the fact that it wasn't just accessible at all times. Even if you went to a record shop, it wasn't just like right into your face. You had to look for it. You had to find bands that you wanted to check out. And I think just the fact that it was so hidden was something that I wanted to explore a bit more.
So let's see. Were you around the era when like I guess illegal downloading kind of started, or was it still like CDs and record stores for you?
It was both. It was
Okay.
both. I started off with like the first CD that I bought, or the first two, was Linkin Park, Hybrid Theory, and Eminem.
Nice.
So that was the first two CDs that I ever bought, and after that, like when the internet kind of became a thing, and you would check out I would check out Roadrunner records for like, because of Slipknot, for like other bands, and I
Yep.
would just listen to everything that would be on Roadrunner at the time. And yeah, that's how I discovered like heavier bands.
Okay, cool. So we're in the same era then, because I was like right at the end of CDs going into like digital downloads myself, and I think if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have found a lot of bands that I ended up liking. But because I was so young too, it was always like, okay, I'll download this song, and I was of the ilk of like, cool, now I'm gonna go buy this record so I can listen to it whenever I want. But nowadays with Spotify and everything, it's like, I don't remember the last time I like bought a record.
Yeah, same. I have to admit, I'm just the same. It's so much easier to just check out a new band if you just listen or look them up on Spotify or Apple Music, and then if you like them and you look for something similar, you just scroll down to like similar artists, and then you discover other cool bands.
Yep. Yeah, it's in back in the day, it used to be compilation CDs. I remember getting those with like whatever album I bought. It's like, oh, free so-and-so records compilation CD. And then you see all the other bands that are on the record label, and you're like, oh man, there's more cool stuff out there. Or
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was for me as well. Like the CDs, the compilations you would get in magazines. So when I was a kid, and if I couldn't afford to buy the newest Metal Hammer, I would just try and like steal the CD from the shop, just take it with me, check out the bands, and then download them.
So what was the music scene like for you growing up in Germany? Or you're also from Russia, correct, too? Or
yeah, I was born in Russia, and by the time, but when I was 10, we moved to Germany.
Okay.
So I spent most of my life in Germany at the time. And yeah, there was quite a diverse metal scene. It was people that would listen to all kinds of heavy music, and there wasn't any big bands coming to play where I used to live. So we would only go to like local shows. And the first time I went to a show that wasn't in the town that I lived was when I was around 16. So I went on my own, and it was a hardcore show. So that's how I already listened to hardcore at that time, but I just wanted to see hardcore bands, and then I took the train for an hour, and I went to see, I don't know if you know them, it's True Colors, Justice from Belgium.
I don't, but I will have to check them out now.
Yeah, they're like straight edge bands.
Okay. Yeah, I always love when people recommend new music on the podcast. I found a bunch of stuff that way where it's like, it's not even metal stuff sometimes. It's just like, hey, if you like this, you should check this out. So I'm always looking for new stuff, which is nice to hear somebody's influences or bands that they saw back in the day. So how did it come about with you and I guess the band kind of forming, getting in Venom Prison, for those that don't know?
Most of us have played in hardcore bands before, and I lived in Germany at the time, and Ash, who plays guitar in Venom Prison, lived with me, and we both just left our hardcore bands, and we kind of started to get really bored, so we were like, we want to play shows again, let's just start this. So we've written a demo tape at home and recorded it at home in the living room. Then we found some other people that we thought would be cool to share the stage with, and then we just released it, and from then on we moved to the UK actually before we released it. So I moved over to Wales, and Ash is from there anyway. So yeah, that's how it all started. We didn't actually plan to have like a serious thing going on with this band. It just turned out the way it turned out.
You know, it's funny because I've heard that story that it was recorded in the living room, but I think for me, like listening to it, it doesn't sound like that, but I think that probably speaks more to like the technology of the day than it does like where it was recorded, because you can seemingly make anything sound like it wasn't recorded in a living room nowadays.
That is true. Well, we actually set up a cab. It was an orange cab and a Marshall amp, and we just covered everything with like blankets and duvets and stuff. Nice. So the neighbors must have had like an awful time on that weekend. But yeah, that's how we recorded it. And then Ash mixed and mastered it himself. So because we didn't really have any money to spend. Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool story too, like thinking about where bands kind of start and like the bare bones of everything in the beginning, you know, having a story like, yeah, we recorded this in our living room. Now it's all there. It's there forever, and you guys are going to know about it.
Yeah, it's actually pretty awesome.
So let's
like what can, yeah.
Go ahead, actually.
I was gonna say that it's pretty awesome, like how a band can develop from just starting in the living room or just in a shitty basement.
That's actually perfect. I was going to comment on that next. Kind of skipping over Animus here a little bit because I do want to talk more about the new record. Holy shit. What you guys have progressed so much from that EP to Animus to the new record. It's just like, what did you guys do, man? I mean, the sound is just it's vitriolic. It's aggressive, even more so than the previous record. And man, what did you guys do to just be that inspired to up it up 2 notches or 5 notches or whatever?
Well, first of all, it's pretty awesome to hear that. Thank you so much. I think we just got really comfortable with who we are and what we're doing because when we've written Animus, it was the first time we've written a full length for this band, and we kind of were still establishing our sound and who we are, and what we want to do. And once this was dropped, we toured the record for like 2 years, and we had to write Samsara just between going on tour and being at home, and it was a lot of pressure, but we knew what we wanted. We knew that we wanted it to be heavier and just having all these influences that we've kind of always had in our minds flow into it. So yeah, I think we just got really comfortable with what we are, what we can do, what we want to do, and we just went and did it.
Yeah, I think there's that old cliche of like the sophomore curse with albums, and I think you guys definitely do not suffer from that at all. It's very rare that you see that much progression from a band right off the bat, and it's very evident in the songwriting and the way the just sounds. Man, how should I say this? It just sounds like heavier and more composed, I think is a good word too.
Yeah, I would definitely say that we had different song structures in mind when we sat down, especially Ben and Ash, when they would sit down together to write the songs. They had certain structures planned, written down, and then they were just going at it. And once they recorded the song, they would send it to everyone. We all listened to it. We give feedback. They change whatever we thought needed changing, or they persisted in keeping it. So yeah, it was a lot of work. But it was a great progress. It was great to see how the songs are developing. I think we've written about 17 to 19 songs, and we then in the end picked the ones that we thought were the ones.
That's a lot of songs. But I mean, at least you guys were like in that creative mode to where like you knew that you had enough material to like really up your game on this one.
Yeah, definitely. We also wanted to prove and to show that we can do better, because like we won like a Best New Band award with Metal Hammer magazine in the UK in 2017 just off that record, and we're like, well, we gotta keep it up. We gotta show that we can do better than this. So we just tried, and we hope that we did. I mean, we're all really proud of it, and we all enjoy it. And like just recording it was so much pressure in itself as well. I think you can feel the pressure in the sound of this record.
What about it was what about it had like all that pressure? Was it just like the time frame, or just wanting to like prove yourselves as far as like growing as musicians and stuff like that?
It was both pretty much.
Yeah.
We basically came back from 2 really long tours. One of them was 7 weeks with Trivium in Europe and UK, and the other one was Devastation in the Nation in America, 5 weeks. So we came back from that, and then we had 2 months till we started recording, and we never practiced the songs as a band together before we did that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've written them, we did pre-productions, and half of them had vocals recorded on them, and I still had to write songs as well myself. So it was a lot of pressure. And by the time we went into the studio, I think we still haven't even played the songs together at that point. But we had everything tabbed out, and we were prepared. And I was still writing lyrics while we were in the studio. it took us, we knew it was going to take us longer to record than we planned, because with Animus, it took us 1 week altogether. And we booked in 1 week with some additional days, and it took us 11 days. Because it is more complicated, because we wanted to prove ourselves, because we felt the pressure that we like, oh, this doesn't sound good enough, I want to do it again.
Yeah.
So that was like my concern when I was recording. So I recorded in the last 3 days of those 11 days, and in the first day I only did one song, because it was like, oh, this sounds shit, I don't want to do it, like, I'll do it again. And then on the last day I recorded for 15 hours.
Ooh.
And there was hardly any breaks, because I just wanted to have it done, because I felt, okay, I sound the way I want to sound, I want to just do it as long as I can. And we finished recording at like 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning, and we were just listening back to it, and we're like, yeah, this is it. And then a huge weight just falls off your shoulders, and I was just so happy with how it turned out.
So you went 15 hours straight, no breaks.
Yeah.
Were you worried about blowing your voice out at all? I usually hear like people try to break it up in chunks, so that's this is a new one for me, hearing that you just went straight for it, which is fucking amazing.
From my personal experience, when I go into the studio, I either get ill, so I can't even start recording it, because in the time when everyone else has recorded everything, I get ill, and then I sound like shit and have to come back. Or I start and then I want to split it up in like different days, and then my voice is fucked, because for whatever reason, probably just pressure and stress. So since Animus, I was trying to do as much as I can in like one day, and luckily I was able to fit those 15 hours in. And yeah, I was afraid of losing my voice, and I think that's why I wanted to do it all while I thought this is going the way I wanted to go.
Well, this gives a whole new perspective now, having listened to the record, because one of the things that I was really, really blown away by is the evolution of your vocal style. It seems like you really push your delivery and range to new depths on this record, and now knowing that you did it in just like 15 hours straight across the board, that explains a lot of the consistency of like how your vocals sound on this record. And they just sound like way more powerful, and I guess, yeah, definitely more powerful, and just more angry, for lack of a better word, there on this one.
Yeah, this record was a lot more emotional, like for me, just lyrically, and I think that's why it translates so well. Yeah, and like honestly, the first day when I started, I recorded one song. It was fine. Then I started doing the second one, and I must have done so many takes where I just wasn't happy with it. While the engineer and Ash, who was in the studio with me at the time, was like, yeah, this is great. I was like, no, it's not. I don't sound like that. I don't want to sound like that. So I had like a complete meltdown, and I was crying. I was like, I just wasn't satisfied. So we stopped on that day, came back on the other. Then we just decided to do more guitar stuff that still needed editing. And because I just didn't feel comfortable, because I was recording in a dark room. It was really cold. I was on my own, and I kind of just hated the fact that I can't see anyone else and how they react, and I just felt isolated, and I didn't like that. So on the last day, we moved everything into the control room, where I could see the engineer and some of the band members, and I just felt more comfortable. That's why I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to do it. Let's push it through till it's done.
So did you do any like vocal preparation as far as like getting more of that depth out of there, or was it just something that has evolved over time from being in the band now?
I think it's just evolved over time. I think like the biggest mistake we've done with Animus was just layering all kinds of depths into the vocals. So I had highs, lows, and like mids, but they were all pushed into one. So you can't really hear that I can actually do lows and like really highs, like highs and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's something that I thought we kind of missed out on when we did that. So we decided to actually show that we have this kind of progression on it, because it was actually there, but through touring and just playing more, it just developed more. I felt more comfortable and tried some different techniques as well.
I think you nailed it, in my opinion. You know, I think before this, like I'd heard you guys, you know, obviously when Animus came out, but I just kind of like, you know, it was like what 2017 when that came out.
End of 2016,
End of
and then
2016.
I think it was repressed in 2017.
Okay, yeah, it's one of those things where like you hear a record and then you just kind of like, there's so much stuff that comes out. Sometimes you forget about bands, and up until now I was like, oh yeah, shit, like what have they been doing? And it turns out you guys have been writing a record. It's hard keeping up with stuff so like all the time, man. But yeah, I think, man, that's one of the things that like just to blow me away with this is just how much you guys have upped everything from the last record. And I think that's very rare to hear or see from a band. You know, I think a lot of bands want to coast off what they did that got them to where they're at, even from a first record going into a second record. But I think you guys are more into that, like, nah, let's just keep pushing ourselves and growing and growing and growing. And I like that more from a band because it's more authentic instead of just like coasting by, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Like, really glad to hear that. I think we're all just always like, as a band and as people, we thought that we can't just stay on something and sound just like we did before. We wanted to take the elements that we enjoyed and that we thought other people enjoyed and just develop them and push them as far as we can.
Yeah. So kind of off topic here, you mentioned that tour with Trivium. My buddy Woody does sound for them. I don't know if you know.
Yeah.
You know Woody? Yeah.
Yeah, I met him. He was doing the sound on stage on that tour.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love Woody. I haven't seen him in a while, but he did sound for a band that I toured with for a little bit, doing merch and stuff, and I've known him for like 10 years almost. Long time. Good dude.
Yeah, he's awesome.
sorry to get off topic there. I was like, hey, maybe she knows Woody or met him. So the new record, the title is Samsara. I don't know how to say it correctly. I like the philosophical aspects of this, about like the cycle of rebirth and death and everything like that. I was wondering, have you seen the movie Enter the Void? Because it has that similar story of that cycle, and there's a lot of
no,
parallels.
I haven't actually.
Oh man,
is that something that I should check out?
It's this is a tough one. The movie is amazing, but it's very dark. It's very dark because, you know, when you think about like that cycle of life and death and everything that happens in somebody's life that leads them to wherever they're going, yeah, it's a tough movie from like an emotional aspect. It fucks me up every time I watch it.
That sounds like it's something right up my street. I love watching stuff like that.
Okay.
Especially if I'm actually in a really low mood myself. I don't know why I don't watch stuff that kind of elevates that. Instead I watch stuff that's more depressing, and then I just end up feeling worse.
I can relate. I do that very often myself. But yeah, it's got those same themes of like, I guess to like sum it up here, a guy dies and then he kind of, you're following him through this like first person POV of, you know, his whole life and then where he's at to end up being reborn basically. And it's visually amazing. It's all in French. So I would recommend it if you're into that kind of stuff. I always tell people, you know, it's dark, but it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I might even watch it tonight.
Ooh, Yeah, I would go for it. So I guess my original point was like playing into those themes of like life and death and the lyrical aspect of this record. Where are you pulling all this stuff from? Is it personal? Is it just kind of like ideas in your head? Thematically, like what is it about?
It was mostly personal. I actually didn't plan it that way because I usually prefer to write lyrics that are more politically infused, which you have those on Samsara as well. But it has more of a personal focus. I've been just going through a really rough time. I've been suffering with depression since probably I was 15, and I never really struggled as much. I just always kind of kept going. When I was a kid, I was harming myself, and as I grew older, I kind of learned to deal with certain things. And now, I was in university. I was in my last year. We were touring a lot, and kind of a lot of shit was going on, and I felt really, really drained. And I've had like the worst depressive episode probably ever. And so I kind of hoped that I'd be able to heal if I write about what I feel and what's in my head. And I don't know, I just feel like life kind of evolves around suffering. And that's how I came about calling it Samsara, because I was kind of always interested in the theory of Buddhism and like this whole life and rebirth thing. And Samsara is basically life and rebirth through suffering, and the suffering aspect is always there unless you're able to transcend. Then you end the suffering because you're not being reborn again. And that's kind of, I really liked playing with this, so I decided to involve that into writing lyrics and just putting down what I feel, because I've also read, I'm really bad with like talking about my emotions because I sometimes don't even know what I feel myself or why I feel that way.
Yeah.
And I've read somewhere that it's just good to even write it down and just to have it out of your system so it doesn't like stock up and you just explode and you don't know what to do anymore. So I've realized that it actually helped a lot. So just listening back to the songs sometimes and reflecting upon what I was feeling at the time just makes me feel a little bit better about myself.
Was it hard for you to be that vulnerable in terms of writing stuff that personal, or was it more therapeutic on your end?
It was kind of both.
Both, yeah.
I actually don't really like giving like so much about myself to other people, like being like an open book. I don't really like that. So I was a little bit afraid, but I just felt so much better just writing it down and reading it back and then recording it, that I thought this is probably the right thing. Because I also know that there's so many other people that might feel the same way, and maybe it helps.
That's actually what I was going to say, is like, you know, the bright side of it is you can look at it is there's going to be somebody out there that's going to read these lyrics and, you know, feel the same way and be like, oh, this speaks to me. And like, you'll probably help them in some aspect, you know, being like dealing with their emotions from, you know, a song that you wrote or the band wrote. And, you know, maybe it helps them get through their shit, and maybe it helps a little bit, or maybe it doesn't help. I don't know. But that's how music's always been with me too. There's been countless bands and lyrics that have been like kind of there for me when I've been at low points, or, you know, even doing this podcast, I've been having a couple rough years myself. So I put all my stuff into, sorry, hang on, my cat is just like meowing like crazy outside my door.
I just had to let my cat out of the room.
Yeah, I put her outside, but then she starts clawing under my door and then meows, and I'm like, yeah, can't come in. Sorry.
Sounds familiar.
But yeah, it's like, how much of your personal life do you want to put out there in your art, because doing this podcast, I've had on people before that have like struggled with depression, and I don't want to jump in there and be like, oh yeah, me too, because that's not like, I don't know, I guess I'm the same way as you. I don't want to be as vulnerable and talk about all my bullshit, which I guess is like a shitty way to look at it on myself. Like, it's not bullshit, it's something we're dealing with emotionally. So I think having that outlet of putting it into songs and, going on stage every night and putting everything out there for the people that are watching you, I think that's equally as therapeutic for the people that are watching you as it is for you being on stage.
Yeah, I hope so. Like, I really hope so, because when you're on tour, sometimes you have like really rough days yourself
Oh,
because
yes.
you're far away from everyone. You feel lonely, but at the same time, you're surrounded by like 20 to 30 other people all the time. So you're kind of lonely, but you're also just crowded and you just don't know how to feel. And then it just helps going out on stage and just screaming your guts out and then coming off and everything feels fine again. Um, yeah, so I don't even know where I want to go with that.
No, I can relate, man. That was always my experience while touring too. It was always like draining some days, but then like once I stopped doing it, it was like, fuck, man, I miss this so much. Like, I want to be back out there. And then, like I still have those days that are like that, but then I'm like, man, I don't know. Getting up at, 8 a.m. to drive 4 or 5 hours to some show in the cold doesn't sound that great.
Yeah. It is fucked up, but like at the same time, it's also great because you're just away from your everyday life and everything seems so far away. And I think that's why it actually become some sort of escape mechanism for me being on tour.
Yeah.
And I used to get really bad anxiety coming off tour. So on the last day, usually it would just hit me and I'd be so anxious and like completely filled with all kinds of emotions that I didn't even want to go home because as soon as you get back through the door, reality hits you again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's hard too because you have those friends or people in whatever groups you hang out with that really can't relate with what you just did, so you kind of feel like alienated a little bit because you just spent like a month on the road seeing all these places, and you want to talk about it, but at the same time it just kind of comes off as bragging even though you don't mean it to be. It's just like that was your life, and then the normal people can't really relate to it. So at least that was my experience with it. Because you're not always around your bandmates or people you toured with all the time. It's more like a summer camp or a traveling carnival.
And when like people like in work or school or uni just like ask you, oh, what's it been like, and you either tell them everything and they think, oh, you're a complete idiot, like
yeah
who do you think you are, or you just tell them a little bit and then they'll be like, oh, that's not even interesting or impressive at all.
So I guess, well, this is kind of embarrassing to admit, but you're the first female I've ever had on this podcast. I was telling Ebony it was really important to me to finally have like that perspective and to be able to talk to somebody that's like more involved in a band aspect of it, because all the females that I knew in the metal scene were like merch girls, kind of like I was. And I guess forgive me for my ignorance for stuff that I'm probably going to ask here, but I think, because I don't really know what you guys experience on your end, because everything that I've seen or experienced was pretty chill. There wasn't a lot of problems, but I'm sure, and actually I'm not sure, I know for a fact there's a lot of sexism and I guess more of a boys club that goes on in heavy metal, and it's kind of unfortunate that a lot of women get treated that way, and you're kind of treated as a second-class citizen. You have to prove yourself more than the guys do, and I don't get why that is. Like, you have as much to offer as anybody else, but like from your experience, have you like dealt with that a lot, or has it been kind of like okay for you?
I had kind of both ends. Because I don't know, especially when I started like playing in bands, I think that's when I actually didn't really realize there'd be like a difference between being a guy or a girl in the band. I
Yeah.
was really naive because it didn't matter to me. I didn't care if someone was like a female singer or male singer. It was just someone in a band for me.
Yeah, that's how I've been too.
And yeah, so, but like actually experiencing that for the first time, so I was like, okay, I'm kind of being treated a bit differently because I started my first band when I was 17, and then people would just assume that you're just with the band, that you're selling merch, or that you're someone's girlfriend, and they just
Yep.
either wouldn't let you in through the door or just would like completely ignore you and shut you off. And stuff like that. With Venom Prison, I haven't actually experienced that many negative things. There's one that always comes back into my mind. It was when we were on tour with The Darkest Hour, and it was the last day of tour, and we played this venue in Vienna in Austria. And after the show, we were just all stood outside, just like carrying gear out and hanging out, because it's the last opportunity for us to like talk to each other before we all have to go home.
Yeah.
And then some guy comes up to me and like asks me for my tour pass, and I was like, no, that's mine. And he was like, oh, but I collect tokens and you don't need it. I was like, why do I not need it? I was on the store. And then he was like, oh, but you're just with the guys. I was like,
Oh.
no, I'm not. I just played. And then he pretended he didn't know I was in the band, but then he was telling me that he didn't like my band because of me being a woman and because of me singing, and he didn't like female vocalists.
Wow.
And I was just like, that's fucking bullshit. First you didn't know I was in the band, now you're telling me that you didn't like my band because of that. And then when I was calling him out and calling him a sexist, he was like, I'm not a sexist. Why are you saying that? I was like, you wouldn't have even known that I'm a woman if you wouldn't have seen me on stage, if you would have heard me from like somewhere over at the bar. And then, yeah, everyone was just like getting involved, and it was heating up quite a lot. And at the end, I just had to tell him to fuck off and leave me alone, because I'm there with my friends and I want to enjoy the evening, and I really don't want to discuss anything with him further.
Yeah, there's no point.
He just wouldn't leave me alone. And then I was just like, you either just fuck off or I punch you in the face. And then his friend just pulled him away, and that was it. But yeah, it was like one of the worst things that happened to me with Venom Prison. Other than that, everything was like quite positive. I think people nowadays are more open, probably more educated. There's still people that come up to me and tell me, oh, they didn't know that women could sing like that or even do anything like that. Which I guess.
Man, then they have not been listening to the right bands. Yeah. Yeah, it's, man, that's so like, the problem with people like that too is like, you can tell that they were only there to see one band. So they came late to the show, didn't give a shit. They're not there to support music. They're there to just like hang out and have a good time and, you know, be seen, as opposed to like supporting everything that's there. And I hate that so much, man. I don't get it. Cause like,
yeah, me neither.
I think it's like
sorry.
one of the, no, you're fine. I think that's the whole point of music. You know, even if you're not there to see the opening band, go try. Like, what do you got to lose? They might be good. They might change your mind, especially if you've never heard of them. Or even if you have, like, just watch them. Maybe their live set will change your mind, as opposed to like what their records sound like. And I think a lot of people, I hear it all the time. It's like, oh, I don't care for that opening band. I'm going to go to see so-and-so. And like, it's not the point of a tour package. It's not the point of a show. Like, you're supposed to be there to support everything.
Like, the opening bands are there to like make you ready for like the main act, because no one wants to just like, if you're the main band on the bill, you don't want to just show up and have people there like not even willing to have a good time because they haven't had the good time before.
Mm-hmm.
Like before you went on stage. And that's, I don't know, I always try and check out the bands. If I go to a show, I check out the bands that I don't know and see if I can miss them or not. I usually just try to be there on time because I don't know. When we played in America, I had people come up to me every night after a set and be like, "I didn't know you guys before. You're really cool. How long have you been around for?" And then,
Yeah, that's a good
cool.
feeling.
Yeah, it's great that you came and checked us out, even though you don't fucking know who we are.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I had to learn over time, because to be fair, like I used to be that way when I was younger. It was like, oh, I'm only going to see this one band. But I think once I started touring, I realized like the importance of going to see the whole show versus like one band or one act. And I feel like I deprived myself of a lot of music and a lot of bands for a number of years. And then, you know, as I grew up, it was like, oh, this is stupid. Why do I do this? And I'm wasting money. Like I'm spending $30 to see one band when I could see 5. No, that's stupid.
Absolutely. At least you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, I try to anyway. Sometimes it's harder than others to learn from your mistakes, but you know, that's life, I guess. But so kind of going back to like what we were talking about, like sexism stuff, do you get a lot of shit online too? Because that's where I see the most of it. You know, like I know comments are just horrible in general, like because it's the internet. But anytime a girl from a band posts something, it's just filled with like, oh, look how hot she is, or some derogatory fucked up comment. And it's like, would you say that to this person in person? Because I don't think you would. I think you're saying it just because you have that anonymity and distance of the internet.
Yeah, we kind of get both. It's either usually when it's usually when like Revolver magazine or Metal Hammer or whatever posts something about us, and it's mostly something with a political statement, and then people just either say something really misogynistic and like sexist and be like, oh, like who are they? Or people just compare you to like other bands with female vocalists, like Arch Enemy, and though we sound nothing like them, but we're
Nope.
not like like oh, it's a girl, she must sound like the other girl. And people that make really sexually objectifying remarks, people that be like, oh, who are these social justice warriors, and who is this bitch, just bend over finally, and stuff like that. So you get all of that stuff. And when I was younger and I was in my first bands and stuff like that, I was coming to life on Facebook and stuff, I was kind of really disheartened, and I would take everything really personal, and but I just really don't care anymore.
That's good.
I know those people would never come up to me in real life and say that into my face. They're just trolls, like most of them anyway.
But I would have to think too, like like you were saying in the beginning, that's got to be like a weird slap in the face that you wouldn't have expected, to like have all these people shitting all over you and saying these things, and then it does happen and you're like, holy fuck, like why do these people do this? Where does it come from? What is the point of this? And the other thing too is I guarantee you half of them, or more than half, probably have never even listened to your band, so they don't know what you sound like in the first place. They're just judging you straight up on like looks.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually seen a comment on one of our music videos and on YouTube, and someone said that they came to the video because they thought it was going to be some like female fronted bullshit, but they ended up liking it, and I was like,
hey,
okay.
at least they said they liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, man. Like the only women that I've met in bands were Candace from Walls of Jericho and damn it, I'm blanking on her name right now, but the girl from Light This City, I don't know why I can't remember her name, but they
don't remember her name, but I know who you're on about.
Yeah. So they seem to like be in that era where there was no internet, and I don't know if they really had to deal with it as much, from an internet perspective, but I'm always curious of like how it was in person back then when they were like at the top of their game. Although like Light the City just came back, but Yeah, it's weird how the internet changed all these like things that people can say or like do to each other. It's fucking weird.
Yeah, it is really strange. Like, I don't get it because I'm not sat there all day looking for people to offend.
I know.
But some people do, and that's just a bit sad.
So is that another thing personally for you that like being a woman in metal, is it important to like I guess be like a figurehead for other women out there to be like, hey, you can be a part of this too, so that way I guess they feel more welcome as opposed to it being like a boys club. I don't know if that sounds ignorant or not, but I'm just trying to like figure out if that's a thing.
I don't think I've ever intended to be that, but I've to realize that because like girls and women come up to me after shows sometimes when I'm at the merch and like tell me that it's so cool that they've actually seen a woman on stage because it was the first time ever, and I'm just like, wow, that's so weird. But like that's actually a good thing because they can see that you don't have to be a guy to do this if you thought that only men can play guitar that well or
Yeah.
like do vocals in that kind of sense. So I do think it's pretty cool, and it's probably like empowering girls and women to participate more in music because you just don't see it as often still, even though it's definitely more present. But yeah, I never like it was never my intention to be like some sort of role model or whatever. But if people want you to be that and it helps them be who they are, then I guess so be it.
I think it's a good thing. I mean, it's definitely grown a lot from, where metal started to now. It's, you're seeing more and more women, which is good, but it's still, I don't think it's like enough, it's either somebody that's been around for a long time and they're like established, like Nita Strauss, but as far as like other women guitar players or other women vocalists, it's like you said, it's like, oh, Arch Enemy. Well, that's like the only women like vocalists, like, come on, there's like fucking 10, 20 of them out there.
A great thing that just happened recently is that Reba from Code Orange was the first female guitarist to get a signature ESP guitar.
I saw that. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, that's so sick.
Actually,
it's a bit sad that it actually only happened in like 2019, but
yeah,
it's great. It's progression. That's always good.
I would actually, I just read something the other day. It'd be cool to get your opinion about this because NAMM just happened. Maybe you saw this. It kind of made the rounds a little bit, but I guess there was somebody that was upset with how Jackson was promoting their guitars because they had basically half-naked women, going around holding their guitars, and they thought it was a little bit sexist and old school. That from their perspective of it, the representation of women is like, oh, you can only look good, but you don't really know how to play guitar. Do you think that's a fair assessment, or do you think maybe their intent was kind of misinterpreted? Because I don't think Jackson was necessarily being like, oh, women can't play guitar, they can only look pretty and hold our guitars. It's kind of a weird, I guess, line there, depending on how you look at it.
I haven't actually heard of that, but it's good to know. I don't really know, like I can't tell what their intentions were, but if they're women that are hardly wearing any clothes, then it's obvious. Then that's really obvious, I guess. I don't know what they were wearing or how they were giving themselves. It could have been an attempt to sell guitars to more women and promote women in music, but it could have also just been something that backfired.
Yeah. That's kind of what I think is it backfired a little bit. Like they weren't intentionally trying to be sexist or anything like that. It's just whoever's in their marketing has a very old school approach of like sex sells.
Yeah.
But yeah,
maybe they should look into endorsing more female guitarists. I think that would help a lot more.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot more people in general, like endorsements, should be given out not just to women, but like across the board, you know, it's something you don't really see anymore. I think it's becoming more and more rare to be endorsed by a company. I'm kind of curious as to why that is. Maybe it's a money
I think
thing.
it's because they have a set number of musicians that they can endorse, and then they won't give you or won't give an endorsement to someone else unless that one person leaves and goes to another company, or and then they can be like, okay, we have space available. Do you want this?
Okay, that
I
makes
think
sense.
that might be what it is.
So, I guess I don't want to take up any more time here. You've given me a ton, but I guess kind of getting back to the new record, what's something that you're the most proud of as far as your contribution, or maybe as a whole with the record, that you're like, holy fuck, I can't believe like we did this?
I think it's just the whole process of how we've written and recorded it together and how we functioned as a band during that whole time, just supporting each other, being on the road and trying to write this. And yeah, I think it was just a really hard and stressful process that we got through, and we enjoy what we created. And I think that's what I'm most proud of.
I always say the best art comes through adversity, whether the listener knows it or not. But hopefully, the people listening to this kind of realize like all the work and growth that went into it. They could be like, "Oh shit! Like, yeah, that makes sense now." Listening to this.
Yeah, that's what you can always hope for when you kind of write a record and then be like, I hope people realize what you went through when you did this.
So let's get to the stupid part, the promo part. When does the record come out, and when does the first singles drop? And I know when the video drops, but I'm not allowed to share it until then. But I've seen it. It's pretty badass.
Yeah.
Actually, can we talk about that real
Thank
quick?
you. Yeah, sure.
So okay, so you did a video, and whose concept was that? What is it? Was it the band's, or was it the directors? Like, how did that end up happening?
That was basically my idea, and then we kind of just swung around with the director and kind of just changed it up a little bit. But yeah, my idea was to have this person, which ended up being me, being pregnant, and then having the child basically forcefully taken out of her womb, and yeah, with intruders in the own house, and yeah, it was really weird filming that, but we enjoyed it a lot, and it basically relates to the song because it's uterine industrialization, and it's about surrogate mothers in India that are being exploited by couples in the West, not just couples in the West, by a whole industry that was created around this whole that people in the West can't have children, and they can't adopt, but they want a baby, and there's the service that provides surrogate mothers from India for couples that want kids. And I think it's a horrible thing that people try to capitalize on the vulnerability of parents, of people that want to be parents, and of people that are vulnerable because of the social status and their poverty. And I think it's a horrible thing, and I know that people suffer a lot from that on both ends. So we kind of tried to feed off that idea and made the video for the song.
Yeah, the idea of speaking about problems like that people might not be aware of is a very good thing too, because I don't know how many people do this now, but I know when I was like growing up and listening to music, I would always read the lyrics. I would get that lyric book and memorize it. Like, I still have full albums like memorized in my head.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I think that's like a lost art on today. But the thing that always comes across to me more, and why I tend to like gravitate towards certain bands or music, is what is the message behind the song? Like, yeah, it can be a funny song like a Guar song or something, and that's fine. But when you have something that's about, you know, socioeconomic problems or injustices in the world, or people dealing with depression and suicide and everything like that, you know, that speaks to me more personally than it does like something else. Not that I don't want to listen to a Guar song, you know, and have a light fun time every now and then, or a gross time. But yeah, I feel like that is more authentic to me personally. I don't know about
that's
everybody else
something
out
that
there.
appealed to me like more when I was a kid growing up, and like even today, I prefer songs with meanings over songs that are just like about, I don't know, fantastic creatures or like killing and raping someone.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I don't enjoy that kind of music with that kind of content. I do every now and then myself, but personally, it appeals to me more having a message, and that's why I write the kind of lyrics that I do, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess from a more philosophical, personal standpoint, it's so crazy to me that that our base need as humans, that we crave making another human so bad that we would make somebody else suffer to have a kid and then take that kid away from them just so we can have that void or need filled within us to have another human being. It's so weird to me. Like, I can't relate to it. I don't ever want children, and I think there's enough people in this world. But it sucks that like our core human instinct is to do that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going through, all that kind of thoughts and emotions while I was researching this, because the idea to write that song came from listening to a podcast on tour. So I kind of wanted to dive in a bit more into that subject, and I think I can understand why people want to have a child that is part of them, because it's made from their genetics. It just grows in someone else's body, but it doesn't mean that the person that is carrying that child does not have an emotional attachment to them, because it grows in them for like 9 months.
Yeah,
it's I don't know, it's something really beautiful, I think, and something that, I don't know, I've never had a kid. I don't know what it's like, but speaking to people that did have that experience, it seems to be something really nice and beautiful, and then you just take it away from them. It's kind of a little bit like, I don't know, like taking a baby away from a cow in the milk industry.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar. And yeah, I'm vegan, and I kind of I feel that, you know. It must be fucking horrible. And I know that a lot of them, yeah, that was the thing as well. The children, after they've been born, they stay with the surrogate mothers for like a month or two, being breastfed, and then they're being delivered to the families. So they develop that attachment to them after they give birth to them, and then it's just taken away.
Jeez. Yeah, I guess that really does kind of play into, you know, the whole life is suffering thing a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard sometimes, man, because I get those feelings myself where it's like, man, what is the point of all this? Like, why does life always have to be like so shit? And then you have good days, you know, where it's like, all right, I get it now, but it's hard digging yourself out of that hole when you're feeling like the weight of everything. Personally.
Yeah, definitely. But then on the other hand, it would also be boring and suck if everything was fine all the time.
Yeah, I wonder that myself too. Like, would I really be satisfied if everything was like perfect exactly like I wanted it? I don't know if I would be. But you never know.
Me neither. Yeah, that's something we'll never find out.
Yeah. Well, Larissa, thank you so much for doing this. Seriously, I appreciate your time, and man, I'm so glad we got to talk about all this stuff, and I'm glad I finally got to have a woman on to talk about these things, because, you know, getting a guy's perspective all the time is fine, but it's nice getting the other's perspective as well, too.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this, talking about all that stuff. It was good.
Absolutely. So I guess the last thing here, when does the record come out? Where can people buy it?
Yeah. When is this going to be live?
Well, I was told not to post anything before February 15th. So whenever you
Okay,
guys
yeah.
want it to put out, I can hold it back. It's not a problem at all.
Okay, fine, yeah, because we're gonna announce the first single's coming out on February 15th, so that's
Okay.
when we're gonna announce everything. So the album is going to be released on March 15th. So it's not too long. We've been sat on it since August, so we're really excited to
Wow.
have it out.
Well, that's like 4 days before my birthday. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've already I'm just gonna go ahead and say I play the album like every fucking day. Like it's good workout music. It's good getting ready for my day music.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure this is gonna be very high on my end of year list when it comes to that. So I think everybody definitely needs to check this record out when it comes out.
Oh, that's sick. That's so good to hear. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Be excellent to each other. And